My fingers trembled as I held my husband's phone. The notification lit up the screen like a silent confession. I can't wait to pick out the perfect ring for our relationship. 23 years of marriage crumbling with a single message from his lover. My husband was just a few feet away, inventing pathetic excuses about why I couldn't use his phone. And me? I pretended to believe him, while my world silently fell apart. To understand how I ended up at this brutal moment of discovery, I need to go back in time and tell how my marriage turned into a trap I refused to escape from. My name is Ellie, and for years I was stuck in a marriage that had lost all traces of affection and partnership. Samuel, my husband, had become a completely different man from the one I married. Where there used to be tenderness, there was now only distance. Where we once had long conversations, now there were only dry arguments and cold exchanges. It was as if we were two strangers sharing the same roof, breathing the same toxic air of resentment and indifference. Samuel lived in a state of constant irritation, as if my presence were a permanent nuisance in his life. His impatience would explode over the most trivial things. If I left a cup in the sink, if I asked about his weekend plans, if I simply existed in the same space as him. "You always have to make everything difficult, Ellie," he used to say, in that tone of voice that cut deeper than any scream. But I refused to give up on the little that was left. I still held on to hope, like some romantic fool watering a dead plant, waiting for it to bloom again. I kept my routine between the flower shop I loved and the almost solitary effort to sustain a relationship that was crumbling right before my eyes. The flower shop was my refuge. Among the roses and lilies, I could find a glimpse of the woman I used to be. My customers saw me smiling, saw my passion for what I did. They didn't know that, at the end of the day, I went home carrying the weight of a marriage that had become a burden. Every morning was a silent battle. I would wake up hoping Samuel would greet me kindly, ask about my plans for the day, show some genuine interest in the woman he'd shared a bed with for over 2 decades. But he barely looked my way. He'd drink his coffee, check his phone with a dedication he never showed me, and leave the house without so much as a "have a nice day." Each day got harder, but I insisted. I insisted like someone who believes time has the magical power to undo the damage, to bring back the man I had fallen in love with. I made the dinners he liked, tried to start conversations about things that might interest him, planned little surprises that were met with indifference or irritation. "Why won't you leave me alone, Ellie? Can't you see I'm tired?" That phrase became the soundtrack of my life. I started to believe I really was the problem, that my need for connection was too much, that maybe true love was this cold, distant coexistence. My friends would occasionally ask how things were at home. I would smile and lie with scary ease. "It's fine. You know how it is after so many years of marriage." They'd laugh, agree, and I'd pretend our situation was normal, that all long-term marriages were like this, empty, joyless, lacking intimacy. Samuel had become a ghost in our own home. He'd spend hours in the office, even when there was no urgent work. When questioned, he always had an excuse ready. "I need to organize some documents. I have to answer some important emails. You wouldn't understand. It's work stuff." I accepted it all. I accepted being ignored, treated like an inconvenient piece of furniture, reduced to an unpaid housekeeper. Because I still believed that, deep down, he loved me. That he was just going through a rough phase. That our love story couldn't end in such a pathetic way. Until a seemingly ordinary situation turned into the breaking point that would change everything forever. It was an ordinary Tuesday when everything changed. My phone had decided to stop working right when I needed it most. I had an urgent email to send to a supplier for the flower shop, and the deadline was closing in. Samuel was in the living room, glued to his phone as always. "Honey, can I use your phone real quick? I need to send an important email, and mine isn't working," I asked, naturally reaching out my hand. His reaction was immediate and completely suspicious. He practically hugged the phone to his chest, like I had just asked to see his naked soul. That won't work, Ellie. The battery's almost dead," he said, avoiding eye contact. I looked at the screen. The battery showed 78%. "But it says it's still well charged," I insisted, puzzled by his behavior. "Yeah, but the phone's been acting up. Battery drains fast. Better wait for yours to work again," he continued, now visibly nervous. That set off an internal alarm I didn't know I had. In 23 years of marriage, Samuel had never refused to let me use his phone. Never. I knew his passcode, he knew mine. Or at least that's what I thought. "Samuel, it's just a quick email. 2 minutes." I tried again, now watching every micro-expression on his face. Ellie, I said no. Why can't you understand? His irritation was rising, but there was something else. Panic. That's when the woman I had become, patient, understanding, always giving in, simply vanished. Without saying a word, I reached out and took his phone. Hey, what are you doing? He protested, but it was already too late. Sending my email, I replied with a coldness that even surprised me. I started typing, trying to stay calm as Samuel paced around the room like a caged lion. I could feel his eyes glued to me, his nervous breathing. The more anxious he became, the stronger my suspicions grew. I was almost done writing when it happened. A notification popped up on the screen. Hi, love. I can't wait for tomorrow. I'm curious about the ring you're going to buy for our relationship. My blood froze, then boiled. My fingers stopped moving across the keyboard. The world came to a halt. Driven by an instinct I didn't even know I had, I tapped the notification. The conversation opened before my eyes like a well-written horror novel. Message after message, I read them. Samuel arranging to go to a jewelry store the next day to buy the promise ring for him and his mistress. I'll make sure to pick something that matches your beautiful eyes, he had written. 23 years of marriage crumbling into sentences he hadn't said to me in ages. The most infuriating part? While I read those love messages, Samuel kept pacing around the living room, probably calculating how to get out of the situation. He wasn't worried about explaining himself, asking for forgiveness, or saving our marriage. He was worried about not getting caught. My blood boiled, but instead of exploding, as any normal person would, I decided to do something completely unexpected. I finished writing the email with the calm of someone grocery shopping. Done, I said, handing the phone back to him with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Thanks. Samuel took the phone, clearly confused by my reaction. He was expecting yelling, tears, maybe even plates flying. He didn't expect that deadly calm. Everything okay? He asked, testing the waters. Of course. Why wouldn't it be? He visibly relaxed. Poor idiot. He had no idea I had already made up my mind. He had no idea that the next day, I'd be there to see with my own eyes the final proof of his betrayal. That night passed in feigned normalcy. We had dinner, watched TV, he even tried cracking a few jokes. I smiled, replied, acted like the perfect wife I'd always been. But inside I was planning. I needed to see it with my own eyes. I needed to be absolutely sure before destroying the life we had built together. The next day, I didn't open the flower shop. For the first time in years, I called my employee and came up with an excuse about not feeling well. It wasn't a lie. I really wasn't feeling well, just not in the way she imagined. At 9 in the morning, I parked my car on a street near the jewelry store mentioned in the messages. From where I was, I had a perfect view of the shop entrance. My heart was racing like I was running a marathon, but my mind was strangely calm and focused. A part of me still wanted to believe I might have misunderstood everything. Maybe Samuel was buying jewelry for me, and that conversation was just about a surprise. Maybe I was being paranoid, destroying my marriage over an unfounded suspicion. But another part of me, the part that had learned to read his lies, knew exactly what I was about to see. The hours passed slowly. I watched people going in and out of the jewelry store. Happy couples picking out rings, nervous men buying engagement bands, women admiring earrings in the display window. Life going on around me while mine quietly fell apart. It was almost 2 in the afternoon when I started to doubt. Maybe he wasn't coming. Maybe he had canceled. Maybe I was just torturing myself for nothing. I was about to leave, drowning in doubt, when I saw him. Samuel got out of his car like he had nothing to hide. He walked toward the store with the confidence of a man who thought he was living the perfect secret affair. He entered the store without hesitation, without looking around, unaware that his wife was less than 50 meters away, watching his every move. The anger I had been holding in exploded like a volcano. I got out of my car, without thinking twice. I crossed the street with firm steps, determined to put an end to that charade once and for all. I pushed the door of the jewelry store hard enough to make the little entrance bell ring like an alarm. Samuel, I shouted, and the entire store turned to look at me. He was leaning over a counter, looking at jewelry with the saleswoman. The look on his face when he saw me was pure terror, like he had seen a ghost, or worse, a betrayed wife. Ellie, what? What are you doing here? He stammered, stepping away from the counter like he'd been caught stealing. I came to see the surprise you're planning, I said, walking up to him with a smile that felt more like a threat. The saleswoman looked between us, clearly uncomfortable with the tension in the air. What a beautiful piece you're choosing, love, I said, looking over the jewelry on the counter. Must be for someone very special. Sweat began to appear on his forehead. He tried to pull me aside, away from the curious eyes of other customers and staff, but I didn't move. The piece is for you, Ellie. It's a surprise I was planning, he lied desperately. I let out a laugh that echoed through the whole store. Of course it is, Samuel. That's why you came alone to pick something out without knowing my taste. What a thoughtful husband. He was red as a tomato, trying to find a way out of that impossible situation. That's when he made the fatal mistake. In his desperate attempt to save himself, the words slipped out before he could think. I was going to have your name engraved on it, Ellie. I swear it was for you. I just accidentally gave her the wrong name. My smile turned even crueler. Wrong name? How interesting, Samuel. And what name did you give her by mistake? The silence in the store was funereal. Even the saleswoman had stopped pretending not to be listening. He realized too late what he had done. His own attempt to lie had become his downfall. It's, he stuttered. Amanda, I finished for him, watching the color drain from his face. The name that was already on the quote when I got here, right? Samuel opened and closed his mouth like a fish out of water. 23 years of marriage crumbling because he couldn't even lie properly. I let out a bitter laugh, looked him in the eyes, and answered with cutting sarcasm. Go ahead and finish buying the gift. I'll come with you to deliver it. Ellie, there's no need. He tried. I insist. I won't miss this for anything. Stunned and with no idea how to escape the situation, Samuel obeyed. He paid for the jewelry with trembling hands, while I smiled at the saleswoman like it was a normal shopping day. When he finished the purchase, I reached out my hand. Thanks, love. I'll keep it safe to deliver personally. I took the little velvet box from his hands and put it in my purse. I'll only give it back after we talk at home, I announced, loud enough for everyone in the store to hear. I walked out of the jewelry store without looking back, leaving behind a panicked husband and a shop full of stunned customers. The show was just beginning. Hours later at home, I was sitting with the little velvet box on the coffee table in front of me and a cold smile on my lips. It was the kind of smile he should have recognized as a warning sign, but Samuel was never good at reading people. He walked through the door like a man heading to the gallows. I knew there was no way to avoid that conversation, but I still tried to keep some dignity. Ellie, about today? He began. I raised my hand, cutting him off mid-sentence. You don't have to say anything, Samuel. I understood everything perfectly. My tone was calm, almost sweet. That scared him more than any yelling would have. Understood what? He asked, still trying to play dumb. I picked up the little box and gently twirled it between my fingers. I understood that you're in love. That you found someone who makes you happy. Someone worthy of jewelry with her name engraved on it. He swallowed hard. And, you know what? I'm happy for you. I went on, my smile growing wider. So happy that I'm going to help you deliver the gift in person. The color drained from his face. Actually, I stood up with the elegance of a queen. I've already made a decision. Start packing. Your Amanda is going to get more than jewelry, she's getting underwear to wash too. Ellie, you can't be serious. I've never been more serious in my life. Come on. We don't have time to waste. She must be waiting for you. Without giving him time to react or protest, I started walking up the stairs toward our bedroom. Samuel followed like a lost dog. Grab your clothes, your documents, your medicine. Everything, I ordered, opening the closet and tossing his clothes onto the bed. Ellie, stop this. Let's talk like adults. Adults don't cheat, I replied without even looking at him. Adults don't lie. Adults don't humiliate their wives in jewelry stores. He just stood there, watching me pack his bags with the efficiency of a housekeeper firing her rude boss. You're really not going to give me a chance to explain? I stopped folding shirts and looked him in the eye. Explain what, Samuel? That Amanda is your cousin? That you were buying the jewelry for my mother's surprise party? What story were you going to make up this time? He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Thought so. Now give me her address. Ellie, the address, Samuel. I won't ask again. Defeated and too drained to keep lying, he mumbled an address that I carefully typed into my phone. I finished packing the 2 large suitcases with everything that belonged to him. 23 years of life, together fit into 2 bags. How ironic. All set. Now, let's go make the delivery. We walked downstairs together to his car. He drove in silence, his hands trembling on the steering wheel, while I looked out the window as if we were on a romantic drive. The address led us to an apartment in a modern building downtown. Nice place, good location. At least he had decent taste in mistresses. Ellie, are you really sure about this? He tried one last time as we parked. Absolutely. I got out of the car and opened the trunk. The 2 suitcases were there, material evidence of a marriage that had just died. Samuel stepped out hesitantly, as if he still hoped I'd change my mind. Poor man. He didn't even know his own wife. We walked to the building entrance. I found apartment 304 and rang the doorbell with all the calm in the world. When the door opened, I came face to face with Amanda for the first time. She was exactly as I'd imagined. Young, pretty, with that hopeful look of someone who still believes in happy endings. Her face went through a series of expressions: confusion, recognition, panic. Hi, Amanda, I said with a smile that could have been in a toothpaste ad. I came to deliver your gift. Before she could respond, I picked up the 2 suitcases and set them down firmly at her feet. The poor girl looked back and forth between me, the suitcases, and Samuel, who was standing behind me looking like he wanted to vanish. Thanks for taking him off my hands, I continued, my voice sweet like poison honey. I was getting sick of him anyway. Amanda opened and closed her mouth like a fish, clearly not understanding what was happening. But I wasn't done. I had a few important instructions to give. Oh, and just so you know, I leaned in slightly toward her. He's allergic to certain cleaning products. So, when you're washing his underwear, make sure to use the right stuff. Hypoallergenic detergent and all that. I took the velvet box from my purse and gently placed it in her trembling hands. And here's your jewelry, with a name engraved and everything. Then I delivered the final blow. Oh, and just so we're clear, no returns. Still in shock from what she'd just witnessed, Amanda ended up letting Samuel stay. Maybe out of impulse, maybe out of curiosity to see what it would be like to have that man all to herself, or maybe out of pride. After all, she thought she'd won some kind of competition. That all of it meant she'd come out victorious. What she didn't know was that she'd just inherited the biggest problem of my life. The first few days were even romantic. Samuel tried hard to impress her, brought flowers, made dinners, acted like the perfect boyfriend he hadn't been to me in years. Amanda felt special, thought she'd landed a mature, experienced man. Poor girl.
But the honeymoon didn't last.
In the very first week, Amanda discovered that Samuel left dirty clothes on the floor, never washed a single dish, and expected her to do everything while he sat on the couch watching TV. The charming prince quickly turned into a lazy frog. Samuel, can you help me with the dishes? She asked in the second week. I'll do it later. I'm tired, he replied without even taking his eyes off the TV. It was exactly the same behavior I'd put up with for years. The difference was that Amanda still had the energy to be outraged. Living together quickly revealed what I already knew. Samuel was a short-tempered man who'd blow up over the smallest things. If the food wasn't exactly how he liked it, if Amanda made noise while he watched his shows, if she dared to have her own opinion about anything. Why do you have to make everything so complicated, Amanda? He'd say, using the exact same words he used on me. The romantic expectations Amanda had nurtured were soon replaced by the weight of reality. Samuel wasn't a passionate lover escaping an unhappy marriage. He was just an emotionally immature man who had traded one babysitter for another. He relied on her for everything. He didn't know where anything was in the house he now lived in, couldn't cook a basic meal, and complained whenever she wasn't available to solve his problems. It was like taking care of an overgrown, cranky child. Where's my blue shirt? He'd ask. I don't know, Samuel. Check the closet. But didn't you wash it? Where'd you put it? Amanda started to understand why I'd left that relationship with a smile on my face. The worst part was that Samuel didn't show any gratitude for anything. He thought Amanda was supposed to take care of him, because that's just what women did. He saw no problem coming home from work and expecting her to have dinner ready, his clothes washed, and still be available to listen to him complain about how hard his day had been. A month passed, then two. Amanda began to feel the real wear and tear of living with someone who drained all her energy without giving anything in return. The house, which had once been her refuge, now felt like a prison where she was the only staff. Samuel, we need to talk about sharing the household chores. She tried to bring up the topic. What chores? I work all day, Amanda. When I get home, I just want to relax. I work too, and I still do everything here by myself. It's not the same. My job is harder. It was always the same conversation. Samuel had an excuse for everything, a justification for every selfish behavior. Amanda started to realize she had fallen in love with an illusion. The attentive man who took her on romantic dates and bought expensive jewelry had just been a temporary performance. The real Samuel was the one sitting on the couch in his underwear, eating snacks and leaving crumbs everywhere, expecting her to clean it all up. In the 3rd month, Amanda reached her limit. One morning, she woke up and looked at Samuel snoring beside her, dirty clothes scattered across the floor, dishes piled in the sink, and realized she couldn't do it anymore.
It wasn't love she felt.
It was exhaustion, frustration, the feeling of being used by someone who had nothing to offer except problems. What once seemed like a victory had become an unbearable burden. The house, once the setting of a romantic conquest, had become a prison where Amanda was the only inmate. She had won Samuel, and now she finally understood why I laughed when I left him at her door. It was on a Thursday afternoon that Amanda found the courage. Samuel came home from work expecting dinner as usual, but instead found Amanda sitting at the kitchen table with a determined look on her face, one he should have recognized. After all, he'd seen the same look on my face months earlier. "Samuel," she said with a calm he didn't expect, "I want you to leave." 3 months. That's how long it took Amanda to discover what had taken me 23 years to accept. Samuel was a man who added nothing to anyone's life. Fate has a peculiar sense of humor. 6 months after I left Samuel at Amanda's door, I was calmly walking downtown when I saw him. He was sitting on a park bench, looking like he hadn't slept properly in weeks. His clothes were wrinkled, his beard unkempt, and he had the lost look of a stray dog. It was almost comical how much he had changed since our last encounter at the jewelry store. For a moment, I considered crossing the street and pretending I hadn't seen him. But my curiosity got the better of me. I wanted to know how life was treating the man who had traded a devoted wife for a fling that lasted only 3 months. When he saw me approaching, his face lit up with a pathetic glimmer of hope. He stood from the bench, like I was his salvation. "Ellie, so good to see you," he said, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. "Hello, Samuel," I replied with a kind of politeness you reserve for distant acquaintances. "How are you?" He hesitated, clearly torn between pretending things were fine or telling the truth. Things haven't been easy lately," he admitted, running a hand through his messy hair. "Oh, really? That's a shame. And Amanda? How is she?" The question hit him like a punch to the gut. I saw the exact moment he realized I already knew the answer. "Amanda, well, we broke up," he mumbled, staring at the ground like a child confessing to breaking a vase. "Really? What a surprise," I said, unable to hide the sarcasm in my voice. That's when Samuel did the most predictable thing in the world. He tried to win me back. "Ellie, I know I made mistakes. I know I ruined things between us. But do you think we could try again? I've learned a lot these past few months. I've changed." I looked at him, really looked. I saw the desperate man in front of me, trying to convince his ex-wife that he had changed in just 6 months. The same man who had taken 23 years to show me who he really was. "You've changed?" I asked, genuinely curious. "How so?" "I realized you were important to me, that our marriage was worth it, that I was an idiot to throw it all away for a meaningless fling." I murmured, pretending to consider his words. "And Amanda helped you reach that conclusion?" He turned red. "Amanda, she kicked me out. Said I was too dependent, that I didn't know how to do anything on my own, that—" He stopped when he realized where the conversation was going. "That you were like a child?" I finished for him. Samuel nodded miserably. "That's when I realized everything, Ellie. I saw that you always took care of me, that you were always patient, that I didn't value what I had." It was remarkable how he managed to make everything about himself. Even his apology was centered around how he felt, what he had discovered about himself. But then something incredible happened. I laughed. Not a bitter or sarcastic laugh. A genuine, free laugh. The laugh of someone who had finally seen the absurd comedy in a situation that once felt tragic. "What are you laughing at?" he asked, clearly offended. "At you, Samuel." "I'm laughing at you." My laugh was that of someone who had broken free from a prison they didn't even know they were in. It was the laugh of a woman who finally understood her own worth. "You know what's funny?" I continued, still smiling. "It took you 6 months to figure out what I'd known for years. Amanda kicked you out for the same reasons I should have kicked you out a long time ago." He tried to interrupt, but I wasn't done. "No one can stand a dependent man, Samuel. You're like a child. A grown, selfish, grumpy child who thinks the world should revolve around him." The words came out with crystal clarity. No anger, no resentment. Just the plain, raw truth. Ellie, please.
Please nothing. You had your chance to be a decent man with me.
You had 23 years of chances. And still, you chose Amanda. I turned to leave, but looked back one last time to say something that needed to be said. And, you know what? Thank you. Thank you for cheating on me, for showing me who you really are, for giving me the courage to walk away from you. These past few months have been the best of my life. I turned my back without rushing, leaving behind not just a man, but an entire cycle of pain, exhaustion, and loneliness disguised as marriage. With steady steps, I walked toward my car. My flower shop was waiting for me, my dreams were waiting for me, my real life was waiting for me. There was finally space for my own happiness, and I intended to fill every inch of it. Samuel remained on the park bench, watching me walk away for the second time. But this time, I didn't look back. There was nothing left to see,